Dorcas Thompson wasn't in soul hunting for adventure. She'd flown in for a pharmaceutical industry summit her firm insisted she attend. 72 hours of monotonous slide decks and forced networking meals that drained her soul. At 47, she'd survived enough corporate gatherings to anticipate exactly how things would unfold. Polite smiles, firm handshakes, business card exchanges, then retreat to the sanctuary of her hotel room. Nothing complicated. Except tonight, her colleague Natasha had practically dragged her to this upscale venue in Gangnam, and Dorcas found herself genuinely alive for the first time in what felt like forever. The bass vibrated through her chest, the cocktails packed a punch, and she suddenly remembered what it felt like to be carefree. She'd chosen a crimson dress that celebrated every curve she'd earned. Her natural coils were styled in a perfect twist-out, and her rich brown skin caught the strobing lights like liquid gold. "Yes, Queen. Show them how it's done." Natasha yelled through the thumping music, matching her energy on the floor. Dorcas laughed freely, arms lifted high, hips moving to the rhythm without a single worry about who might be observing. Tonight, she owned her joy completely. What she couldn't possibly know was that someone extremely dangerous had her locked in his sights. Hidden away in an exclusive VIP area that regular patrons didn't even know existed, a young man sat motionless, his gaze fixed on Dorcas like a hunter tracking its next kill. His name was Jiwon Lee. Just those two words. People stopped using formalities with him years ago because nobody possessed enough nerve to get that comfortable with Seoul's most feared operator. At 30 years old, Jiwon Lee commanded Seoul's criminal underworld with an iron grip that law enforcement reluctantly acknowledged. Narcotics, firearms, corrupt officials, compromised judges. If money flowed through illegal channels, Jiwon's fingerprints were on it. His name was whispered in shadowed alleyways and pedestrians crossed streets when his motorcade approached. But in this precise moment, none of his empire mattered because the woman in crimson had just stolen every conscious thought from his brain. Tae, his most trusted lieutenant, caught the shift instantly. "Everything all right, boss?" Jiwon couldn't respond. He was hypnotized watching how this woman carried herself. Self-assured, magnetic, completely oblivious that Seoul's most dangerous predator had just marked her as his. She wasn't some naive 20-something. He recognized that seasoned elegance younger women couldn't manufacture. The kind of woman who understood her worth and refused to diminish it for anyone's comfort. Jiwon didn't just want her. He required her. "Get me everything," Jiwon commanded quietly, eyes still glued to Dorcas. Her identity, where she's staying, her reason for being in Seoul. "Everything." "Understood, boss." Tae immediately started working his phone, but Jiwon's patience had already evaporated. He rose and descended the stairs. On the dance floor, Dorcas was so immersed in the moment she missed the crowd beginning to separate around her. Didn't register how people suddenly created distance, forming a clear circle of space. She didn't notice when the music seemed to fade, though the volume hadn't actually changed. And she absolutely noticed when a voice behind her said, "You move like you own every inch of this space." Dorcas spun around and nearly choked. The most devastatingly attractive man she'd witnessed in her entire existence stood before her. Young, early 30s probably, with flawless skin, razor-sharp features, and eyes so penetrating they made her stomach somersault. Dressed entirely in black, something about his posture radiated both danger and magnetism simultaneously. "Just enjoying myself," Dorcas managed, attempting casualness while her pulse hammered. "I can tell." His English was impeccable with just enough accent to make everything sound intoxicating. "I'm Jiwon Lee." "Dorcas." "Dorcas," he repeated slowly, as if savoring each syllable. "May I buy you something to drink?" She knew she should decline. Everything about this man screamed warning signs. But Dorcas had spent 6 years playing it safe after her divorce, being responsible, being invisible. Tonight, she craved recklessness. "Sure," she answered. They ascended to the VIP section, which Dorcas immediately recognized was far beyond regular club standards. Private seating, champagne bottles that probably exceeded her mortgage payment, and security personnel stationed everywhere. "So, what's your profession?" Dorcas asked, sampling the most expensive champagne her lips had ever touched. Jawunli smiled, but it was the type of smile that never reached his eyes. Import and export. Incredibly dull business operations. Liar, Dorcas thought, but didn't challenge him. They conversed for what might have been hours or possibly minutes. Time distorted when Jiwunli gazed at her like she was the only woman breathing. He inquired about her existence, her career, her daughter studying back in America. He absorbed every word like it contained profound meaning. "I'm departing Seoul in 48 hours, Dorcas mentioned eventually. "Just here for professional obligations." Jiwunli's expression transformed. Darkened. 48 hours isn't sufficient. Sufficient for what? To make you reconsider leaving. Dorcas laughed nervously. Stay? I have responsibilities back home. A career. My daughter. What if I provided you compelling reasons to remain? Jiwunli moved closer and Dorcas inhaled his cologne. Expensive, addictive. What if I confessed that I haven't been capable of thinking about anything except you from the instant I spotted you on that floor? That you've completely consumed my thoughts. That's insane. You know nothing about me. Not yet. His fingers touched her cheek and Dorcas felt lightning course through her system. But I will. And you'll understand me. Then you'll realize why I cannot permit you to leave. Every alarm in Dorcas's consciousness fired simultaneously. This was excessive, accelerated, overwhelming. But heaven help her, she didn't want his touch to end. I should find my friend, Dorcas said, standing despite every instinct screaming to stay. Jiwunli stood too, extracting a matte black card from his pocket. Contact me tomorrow. We'll share dinner. I'm uncertain that's wise. Call me Dorcas. It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. Please. That final word softened the command just enough that Dorcas accepted the card. She located Natasha at the bar looking frantic. Girl, where have you been? I was seconds from calling security. I met someone, Dorcas said, still lightheaded. Who? His name's Jiwunli. He's. Dorcas couldn't finish. What was he? I don't know. But he wants dinner tomorrow. Natasha's eyes widened dramatically. Jiwunli? Just those two names? Nothing else. Yeah, why? Natasha seized Dorcas's arm and pulled her toward the exit. We're leaving immediately. What? Why? Because I asked the bartender about that VIP section. When I mentioned someone named Jiwunli, he literally lost all color in his face. Dorcas, people are terrified of him. Genuinely terrified. Dorcas's stomach plummeted. What are you suggesting? I'm saying you just shared drinks with a crime lord. Back at their hotel, Dorcas couldn't sleep. She kept replaying Jiwunli's eyes, his touch, how he'd observed her like she was irreplaceable treasure. The following morning, someone knocked on her door. A hotel staff member stood there holding the most spectacular arrangement of crimson roses Dorcas had ever witnessed. The card read, Dinner tonight at 8. My driver arrives at 7:45. Wear crimson again. You looked like royalty. There's also this, the employee added, presenting a designer garment bag. Inside was a crimson evening gown that probably exceeded Dorcas's monthly salary, and it was precisely her size. Exactly her measurements. How did he determine her size? Dorcas's phone rang. Unknown caller. Hello, Dorcas. Jiwunli's voice weakened her knees even through the phone. Did you receive my gift? How did you know my measurements? How did you know which hotel? I wanted to ensure tonight would be flawless. Say yes, Dorcas. Let me demonstrate what your existence could become. Every rational neuron in Dorcas's brain screamed danger. This man was hazardous. He'd somehow discovered where she was staying and her exact size. That wasn't romantic. That was surveillance. But another part of her, A part she'd suppressed for years, whispered, "When did someone last want you this intensely?" "Okay." Dorcas heard herself agree. "I'll have dinner with you. You won't regret this decision." Jaewon Lee's voice softened. "I promise you, Dorcas Thompson, you won't regret it." He disconnected. Dorcas stared at her phone. He knew her surname. She'd never mentioned her surname. She approached the window and her blood turned arctic. 5 black SUVs were parked outside the hotel, just sitting there. Waiting. Dorcas grabbed her phone and called Natasha. "We have a serious problem." Natasha arrived within minutes. When she looked outside, she gasped. "Those weren't there yesterday evening," Natasha said. "Dorcas, what situation have you created?" "I don't know," Dorcas paced frantically. He seemed charming. Intense, yes, but charming. But this. She gestured at the vehicles. "This is beyond reasonable. You need to cancel that dinner." "And say what?" "Sorry, your stalking tendencies are unattractive." Dorcas collapsed on the bed, face in her hands. What if he becomes angry? What if? Her phone rang again. Jaewon Lee. Dorcas answered with trembling hands. "Hello. Those men outside your hotel provide protection, not intimidation." Jaewon Lee's voice was eerily calm. "I made an error last night being seen with you so publicly. Now certain individuals know you hold significance to me. Those men will ensure your safety until you depart Seoul." "Significance to you?" "We just met." "I understand. But Dorcas, I've never experienced this before. Never. And I need you to comprehend that in my reality, when something matters to me, I protect it fiercely. You matter to me." "What reality? What exactly do you do, Jaewon Lee?" Extended silence. "Have dinner with me tonight, and I'll reveal everything. Complete transparency. No more mysteries." Dorcas should disconnect. Should pack immediately and catch the earliest departure home. 7:45, she said instead. "But I'm meeting you there." "Send the address." "I'm driving myself." "Dorcas, those are my conditions. Accept them or forget it." She could hear amusement in his voice. "You're headstrong. I find that incredibly attractive. I'll text you the location." After he hung up, Natasha stared at Dorcas like she'd lost her sanity. "You're actually going?" "I have to understand," Dorcas said. "I have to know what this is." That evening, Dorcas wore the crimson gown. It fit like it was custom-tailored for her specifically. She applied her makeup, wore her finest jewelry, and tried ignoring her shaking hands. The address Jaewon Lee sent led to an establishment in a Seoul district that radiated wealth and exclusivity. When Dorcas arrived, Jaewon Lee stood outside waiting, and her breath caught. He wore a black suit that probably exceeded her vehicle's value. When he spotted her, his entire demeanor transformed, softened. "You came," he said, opening her car door. "I said I would. You also could have reconsidered." "I'm grateful you didn't." He extended his hand, and Dorcas accepted it. The restaurant was vacant. Completely vacant. "Where is everyone?" Dorcas asked. "I reserved the entire establishment. I wanted privacy for this conversation." They sat at a window table overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. The cuisine was extraordinary, but Dorcas barely registered taste. She was too focused on Jaewon Lee, who kept watching her with those hypnotic eyes. "You said you'd tell me everything," Dorcas finally said. "So tell me, what do you actually do?" Jaewon Lee placed down his fork and met her gaze directly. "I operate Seoul's largest criminal enterprise. Narcotics, weapons, financial laundering, extortion. If it's illegal and generates profit, I control it." Dorcas's heart stopped. "You're a gangster." "I prefer businessman, but yes. I'm what people call a crime boss." She should leave. Should run. Should. "I've ended lives, Dorcas." Jaewon Lee's voice remained steady. "Not numerous, but sufficient. I've ordered executions. I've demolished families. I'm not virtuous." "Then why tell me this?" "Because I need you to understand exactly who I am before you decide." He reached across the table and captured her hand. I'm 30 years old and I've never believed in love. Never. I considered it weakness. But then I witnessed you dancing and something inside me shattered. I cannot explain it. All I comprehend is that I need you in my existence, Dorcas. And I refuse to deceive you about my identity to achieve that. Dorcas's mind spun wildly. This is madness. We just met. You're a criminal. I'm a pharmaceutical researcher with a normal existence. This makes zero sense. Love never makes sense. Love? You don't love me. You don't even know me. Then allow me to know you. Ji-won Lee's grip tightened. Stay in Seoul. Understand me. Let me prove I can be what you need. I can't just abandon my life. Why not? What's waiting for you? An ex-husband who's remarried? A daughter living independently at university? A career you excel at but doesn't satisfy you? Ji-won Lee leaned closer. I can provide everything, Dorcas. Everything you've craved. You simply have to agree. How did he know about her ex-husband? About her daughter? You investigated me, Dorcas said slowly. You had someone excavate my entire existence. Yes, that's insane. That's survival. I don't gamble with things that matter. Dorcas withdrew her hand and stood. I need air. She walked onto the balcony and Ji-won Lee followed. Seoul's skyline sparkled before them, beautiful and overwhelming. I'm frightened, Dorcas admitted. You frighten me. Good. You should fear me. Ji-won Lee approached from behind, close but not touching. But I will never harm you. I'd incinerate this entire city before permitting anyone to hurt you. Why me? Why not someone younger? Someone who belongs in your world. Because you're authentic. His voice roughened. Everyone in my world is fabricated. They want my wealth, my influence, my protection. But you looked at me like I was simply a man. Not a monster. Just a man. Do you understand how rare that is? Dorcas turned to face him, and the vulnerability in his eyes nearly broke her heart. He looked isolated. Desperately, achingly isolated. I can't stay in Seoul, she said softly. But I don't want to never see you again either. Then don't leave. Ji-won Lee cupped her face. Give me 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks to prove this is genuine. If after 2 weeks you want to return home, I'll personally escort you to the airport. But please, Dorcas, give us an opportunity. She was about to respond when her phone rang. Natasha. I need to take this, Dorcas said, stepping away. Dorcas, Natasha was crying. You need to leave immediately. What? Why? I've been researching Ji-won Lee all day. Dorcas, he's not just a gangster. He's wanted by Interpol. There are allegations he's personally killed over 20 people, and there's an entire dark web forum discussing him where people share stories about bodies that vanish when they cross him. Dorcas felt nauseous. Natasha. 2 years ago, a woman attempted leaving him after they dated briefly. They discovered her body in the Han River. Dorcas, people who get involved with him don't just walk away. They disappear. Dorcas's hand trembled so violently she nearly dropped the phone. I have to go. She ended the call and turned to find Ji-won Lee standing there, having overheard everything. Is it true? Dorcas's voice barely functioned. Did you kill a woman who tried leaving you? Ji-won Lee's expression turned glacial. No, but I know who did. And I ensured they suffered appropriately. She wasn't mine to protect, but she died in my territory. So I accepted responsibility. That's not an answer. The answer is I've killed people who deserved it. Rapists, child traffickers, men who brutalize women. His eyes became black ice. But I have never and will never harm a woman. Especially not one I care about. How do I know you're being truthful? You don't. Ji-won Lee stepped closer. You have to trust me. And I recognize that's asking the impossible. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the structure. Glass exploded. Alarms shrieked. Ji-won Lee grabbed Dorcas and pulled her down as bullets shredded the space where they'd been standing. What's happening? Dorcas screamed. My enemies just committed a fatal error. Ji-won-lee extracted a weapon from beneath his jacket. Stay down. Don't move. Men in tactical gear burst onto the balcony, and Ji-won-lee transformed into concentrated violence. Dorcas watched horrified as he eliminated 3 men in seconds. His movements precise and terrifyingly efficient. More attackers flooded in. Ji-won-lee was shouting in Korean into his phone. More gunfire. More screaming. Then silence. Ji-won-lee grabbed Dorcas's hand. We're leaving now. They ran through the restaurant, past casualties Dorcas tried not seeing, and onto the street where dozens of black SUVs screeched to stops. Get in. Ji-won-lee pushed Dorcas into the center vehicle. What about you? I'll be right behind you. I need to ensure they don't follow. Ji-won-lee. But he was already gone, sprinting back toward the building with his weapon raised. The SUV accelerated with Dorcas screaming for them to return. They drove for what felt like hours, taking turns so aggressively Dorcas felt sick, until finally arriving at a massive compound surrounded by walls and armed guards. A man opened her door. Miss Thompson, please accompany me. You'll be secure here. Where's Ji-won-lee? The boss will arrive shortly. But an hour passed. Then 2. Then 4. Dorcas sat in a luxurious room that felt like a cage, staring at her phone, jumping at every sound. Finally, at 2 a.m., her phone rang. Unknown caller. Hello. A voice she didn't recognize spoke in accented English. Miss Thompson, my name is Park. I lead the Jade Dragon Syndicate, and I'm currently observing your boyfriend, Ji-won-lee, who has a weapon pointed at his skull. Dorcas's entire world stopped. What? He's alive currently. But that depends entirely on your next actions. What do you want? You, Miss Thompson. In exchange for him. You see, we've been monitoring. We know you're valuable to him. And we're willing to negotiate. A trade. A trade? You surrender yourself to us, and we release Ji-won-lee. You have until sunrise to decide. That's 4 hours from now. The man laughed. Choose carefully. Because if you don't appear, we'll return Ji-won-lee to you in pieces. The line went dead. Dorcas stared at the phone in absolute terror. Outside, she heard vehicles arriving. Dozens of them. She ran to the window and almost collapsed. 50 black SUVs were pulling into the compound, surrounding it completely. Ji-won-lee's men were scrambling, grabbing weapons, shouting commands. Dorcas's phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number. Look outside. That's our army. You have 4 hours. Come to us or everyone in that compound dies. Including Ji-won-lee. A photograph arrived. Ji-won-lee, bloodied and restrained to a chair, unconscious. Dorcas's hands shook so violently she could barely hold the phone. What had she stepped into? And how is she going to survive? What will Dorcas do? Will she sacrifice herself to save Ji-won-lee? Or is this all an elaborate trap? Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss part 2. This story is about to get even more insane. Comment below. Should Dorcas save Ji-won-lee or save herself? Let me know what you would do.